By the time we get to this course, we shouldn't be graphing most functions, at least simple functions, by making an extensive table. We have to understand the graphs of our most basic functions. And two of those functions are involved on the 8th problem on the practice test. And they would be the y equals x cubed and y equals square root of x functions. Okay? If you just pick representative values that tell you what you need to know about the behavior of the function, you don't need to pick a lot more. And you can always pick values that you can easily evaluate in your head to do basic functions of this nature. So for y equals x cubed, we can make a table, just a short one. Okay? The only numbers I really need are -1, 0, 1/2, 1, and 2. Very easy to evaluate the function. And y is then going to be -1, 0, 1/8, 1, and 8. So if I want to draw the graph, I've got the point -1, -1. I've got the point 1, 1. And I've got a point 2, 8, which is going to be up here quite a ways. Okay? I've also got the 1/8 here, which is going to be much closer to the origin. So I can see that I've got something like a parabola, but it's flatter here and steeper here than an actual parabola. Then, knowing what I did to get the value for -1, I can see pretty clearly that if I use -1/2 and -2, I would get -1/8 and -8. In other words, just the negatives of the values that I used here, which tells me that there's a point here and a point down here, and that the graph here is going to be just the reflection of this graph through the origin. Okay? Now that's the graphing technique that we need to learn in have learned in pre-calculus, but people just don't, because when we try to teach it in pre-calculus, people don't even understand numbers well enough to know that 8 is bigger than 1. Well, yeah, they understand that, okay? But there are a few little subtleties in the tables that you would make that make it hard for people to come out of our prerequisite courses, which should be doing a much better job, but they aren't, that allow people to predict what kind of values of x are going to give us meaningful values of y. The mental arithmetic just isn't there because overuse of calculators, okay? So you don't particularly have that handicap. You're pretty good with mental arithmetic and so forth, but you can still be better, and this kind of exercise helps, okay? Now, how are we going to get y equals square root of x? Oh, it's okay to make a table, but you should not be punching buttons to get your values. Use your brain to get the values, okay? So what's a good value of x to use that you can easily evaluate in your head?
4.
4? Yeah, 4 is a great number. We'll put that down here because there's some numbers that you would evaluate before you evaluate 4. Okay? I'd say there are 2 more. And neither one of them is bigger than 4. Huh? You could do 1. What's even easier than that?
0.
Yeah. That's enough. It gives you the shape of the graph. I should have put my y-axis over here further, but okay, if this is 4, and there's 2, 3, and 1, and you'd have 1 and 2 up here, and you'd have a point here, and a point here. And we should know from calculus that as x approaches 0, the derivative of the square root of x approaches infinity. Because what's a derivative? It's 1 over 2 square root of x. So the reciprocal of the square root of x is going to approach infinity as x approaches 0. So we know this thing starts parallel to the y-axis, but then of course it has to quickly start curving. So it's going to look like this. Okay? Now the two functions that we have are x cubed, is it plus 4?
It's plus 8.
I wonder if I messed that up.
Yeah, it's plus 8.
Where is it? Okay. No, I did it, okay. Okay, x cubed plus 8. Then y equals,
The square root of x plus 1 and plus
yeah,
7.
okay. Okay? Well, y equals x squared plus 8 means that we're just adding 8 to every y value. That's going to just lift this graph up 8 units. Okay, so I'm going to use this graph. I'm just going to say, okay, here's 8. And down here is my x-axis. Okay? And then I'm going to do y equals x plus square root of x plus 1 plus 7. Now I know then that if x equals negative 1, this is going to be 0 and y is going to be 7, right? So I'm going to have up this point. Something's wrong. I gave you the coordinates of the intersection points, but they're wrong. Don't know how that could have happened. I've never done anything wrong before. Okay? Well, that means this point pretty much corresponds to the origin here. Now, if you understand how to graph by translations, you know that what this does is pulls this graph over 1 unit and raises it up 7 units. So here we've come over to the left 1 unit, up 7 units, and we have the point that corresponds to the origin. Then 0 here, okay, well, that's what you're going to get when x equals 0, right? And then when x equals 3, you're going to have the square root of 4, which is 2, right? So you would go all the way out to x equals 1, 2, 3 before you got up to 2, so the graph would be here. And now you know, since this graph is like infinitely steep here, but it goes through this point and this point, there are possibilities. And what actually happens if you work it out, and I'm not going to, didn't ask you to work it out. I told you where the intersection points are, okay? But the intersection points aren't exactly what I put on the paper because I think I solved it wrong. You have an intersection point here, here, of course here, and another one about here. Okay? On the paper, I gave you those points. So what this looks like is badly drawn, but you have 3 regions between the graphs. I'll correct those coordinates for you because they should all just be negatives. If you just change the sign of every coordinate, you have x equals 0 and x equals 1, right? What should be x equals negative 1? And of course negative 0 is 0. And then you have something like a 0.6 and a negative 0.8, right?
Yeah.
Well, it should be 0.6 and negative 0.8. Okay? Given those coordinates, you can figure out what to integrate on each of these regions to get the region between the graphs. There are 3 regions, and of course we went over that last time with a case where you had 2 regions. Okay?